Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to the webinar on Journey of Inclusion through the Voices of Families. This session is presented by Pallavan Learning Systems in association with Ritinjali, Center for Escalation of Peace, and Pallavanjali. Pallavan Learning Systems, or PLS, is an educational research organization centered around the idea of learning to learn. Through curriculum work, professional development, and platforms such as this webinar, we aim to keep conversations on education thoughtful, relevant, and responsive to changing times. Ritinjali works towards empowerment through holistic education and skilling, building community capacity with dignity and inclusion at its core. The Center for Escalation of Peace creates platforms for dialogue across borders, especially focused on young minds, recognizing that peace must be actively nurtured. Pallavanjali is an inclusive school, intervention center, and training institute committed to enabling individuals from diverse and undeserved backgrounds to realize their potential. Through education, skill building, experiential learning, and workplace partnership, it supports children, young adults, and persons with special needs in building confidence, independence, meaningful livelihoods, and a stronger sense of belonging. Today's conversation invites us to reflect on how families, institutions, and communities can work together to create meaningful opportunities, strengthen support systems, and ensure dignity, belonging, and participation at every stage of life. If you have any questions during the discussion, please share them in the chat box and we will address them during the Q&A session. I would like to begin by introducing our moderator and panelists. Nina Wag is a parent, advocate, and change maker who has been actively involved in autism advocacy for over 2 decades. As a mother of a 26-year-old son on the autism spectrum, her work has been shaped by lived experience and by the question, what after us? Driven by the need to create sustainable support systems for autistic adults, she founded ALAP, Assisted Living for Autism Persons, which focuses on supported living solutions for young adults on the autism spectrum. Recognizing the need for greater structure, collaboration, and standards within the assisted living sector, she also founded ALFOC, Assisted Living Facility Organizations Consortium, bringing together organizations working in this space across India. Nina is a regular speaker and writer on inclusion and the rights of persons with disabilities. She is also a poet, playwright, and Hindi translator. Pooja Sharma is the founder and CEO of Sarvodaya Collective, an organization working to build informed, enabling, and inclusive communities around persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities in India. Drawing on her lived experience as a sibling, she focuses on cultivating active allies across schools, workplaces, and communities, and on shifting attitudes from awareness towards deeper acceptance and meaningful inclusion. Before founding the Sarvodaya Collective, Pooja spent over a decade working in corporate strategy and portfolio management with organizations including Pearson PLC and Central Square Foundation. She has also served as a trustee of the Bell Foundation as a school governor and advisory roles with social impact organizations. Her work is grounded in the belief that inclusion is shaped not only by policy, but through everyday choices that enable people to be seen, accepted, supported, and included as equal members of society. Mary Barua is an activist, special educator, parent advocate, and one of the pioneers of the autism movement in India. She began her work at a time when awareness, understanding, and support for autism were extremely limited and has since played a significant role in advancing autism awareness, education, diagnostics, training, advocacy, and policy in the country. As Director of Action for Autism, Mary has worked extensively with autistic individuals, families, educators, and professionals, helping to strengthen services and support systems while encouraging the growth of parent-led initiatives across India. She is also a writer, teacher, trainer, counselor, and advocate, and she is an Ashoka Fellow. Her work reflects a long-standing commitment to building an inclusive society that challenges narrow definitions of normal and encourages the rights, strengths, individuality, and potential of autistic persons. She has received national and international recognition for her contribution to the field. Raman Bhushan is the primary caregiver to his daughter with cerebral palsy, and his lived experience as a parent has shaped his understanding of care, development, dignity, and quality of life. His primary focus has been on supporting his daughter's development and creating the conditions that enable her to lead a meaningful and fulfilling life. Professionally, Raman is an independent consultant with close to 30 years of experience in function and business leadership roles across analytics and data science. He has extensive experience in designing and implementing data science solutions for leading global and Indian corporations, as well as government and social sector organizations. Raman brings together his professional experience and professional journey as a caregiver. It now gives me great pleasure to invite Nina Wag to moderate the session. Over to you, Nina.
Thank you, Sunena. Thank you, Tuttan and Pallavanjali for organizing this amazing and creating this amazing platform. As they say, that family is the first unit of any society. The family value system reflect in the society. Family is the first system for care and support. When the family strives, the individual becomes strong. But when the family, especially with the special needs, struggle, you can see the strain on the society. But today we are reflecting as to how far we have come in terms of inclusion and how much more needs to be covered. Because the family with special needs struggle with their own challenges, and there are a lot of gaps that still needs to be first identified. And then we have to reflect as to how we can, as a collective, narrow these gaps and move along in harmony. So, Raman, Pooja, Mary, welcome you all. It's very nice to connect with you again. Raman, I was thinking that since we're talking about inclusion and keeping in mind that the family is the first unit, but I think even if we step back a little, every individual's journey starts with themselves. So what was the first moments when you came to know that, you have a child with cerebral palsy and, that now the life will have a different trajectory for you? What were those first initial moments and how did you deal with it?
Right. So first of all, thanks, Sunena and everybody who's just sort of bringing me on this platform. It's really lovely to share my journey and hopefully learn from my panelists as well. So, Nina, in our case, Manya was a ultra preterm child, almost 31, 32 weeks when she was born, and she was in the hospital for almost a month because of some complication or the other. So while we were apprehensive about it, there was no clue as to what the road is going to be in future. And even when we brought her home, it took us almost a year and a half before we started sort of, getting signals that there is something which is not, or which is not similar to any normal child, whether it's about crawling or walking, or even in Manya's case, it was even the vision as well. Now, and I'll be honest that initially, at least for me, I'm an optimist, and B, I was involved in my corporate life at that point in time, and my wife was the primary caregiver. So for me personally, it was almost, I don't know, maybe 2011 and 12, which is almost good 6, 7, 8 years after Manya was born. Then it struck me that I need to think differently, because till then we focused on whatever the best care we could do from a therapy point of view, from a counseling point of view, from an education point of view. And there was a belief that, that things will work out. So that's the human nature that I guess all of us have. So it's like almost acceptance came after 7, 8 years of Manya's existence, because we always believed, this is something which can be overcome through therapy or practice or through other sort of interventions. And it was only in 2011 and 12 that we started realizing that while she's making a lot of progress, there are certain areas where she won't go beyond them. and Manya being a cerebral palsy child. Now, the thing with that is that it's not a progressive condition. So it is what it is. So it doesn't deteriorate, it doesn't move forward. So what you do is you start working around it and sort of build the life around it. So I guess it took us 7 years. And I think the biggest challenge was when she moved from moving in a pram to a wheelchair, because that was the biggest, I guess visually it was the most, setback at that point in time. Because at pram level, she was still, people said, okay, she's a baby, she's moving around in a pram, that's not a big deal. But when you move into a wheelchair as you grow, that's where the differentiation with other kids come into play. Even the kids with special needs who are mobile, that distinction was very stark. And I think that's when sort of the first realization came that it's going to be a different life. It's not going to be a same life.
Thank you, Raman. Hi, Mary. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah, Mary, I have known you myself from now almost, I think, 23 years. And I think you have been on the horizon. And I think you are one of the first names in terms of autism advocacy. But I would like to take you, way back. And could you share with us what were your, initial reactions as a mother who was told that, you have a child with who's not normal and he would require lifelong assistance? How did you deal with it? What were your initial days? Do you remember them?
Well, given that I'm 120 years old and my son got a diagnosis in the 1980s, it was a very different world from what it is now. There was no internet and, pick up your mobile and get information. So even before I got a diagnosis, he was almost 5 at the time. I had known for a long time that maybe there's something off, and everybody told me, no, he's absolutely fine, and you're just, you're a worried mother. And so my understanding was that I was a horrible mother because everybody else seems to manage their child so well, and I'm unable to manage him. So there's something very wrong with me. And the other thought in my head was, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but as he gets older, he'll get okay, right? And then when I got the diagnosis, honestly, I'd never heard the word before. The doctor couldn't say much. And the only information I had was a little paragraph in a book on psychology at the American Library, which didn't say much apart from saying that I was partly responsible for the autism. And so I think it took me a month and a half or so to get my first book. There weren't that many books at that time either, to get my first book. And till then, I think it was kind of a sense of I wanted to do something, right? I like to get going, like what do I do? And well, a bit, like Raman mentioned, I think I'm also a bit of an optimist. Like whatever it is, we'll work at it, we'll figure something out. Whatever it is, I'll deal with it. But you can't do that when you don't have any information. You have no idea what to do. So it was a sense of blankness. What do I do? And that lasted for about, I think, a month till I got my book and I could get myself charged up. And yeah, I would say that was really the main thing. And I'm not somebody who really, it's only when I started my work formally as Action for Autism that I heard about this thing. And before that, actually, when I was doing a awareness program with another not-for-profit where I was
I'll come on to that phase, Mary.
Okay.
But I would like to move to Pooja, because I've heard the father, I've heard the mother, and I would like to hear from the sibling, because siblings are mostly cushioned by the fact that you don't worry, we are here to look after, and you are in your own safety cocoon kind of a thing. What were your earlier memories of having a sibling with special needs? Did you hear about the labels? Were you scared that you will be ridiculed or lampooned for having a sibling who's different? What were your initial memories of early childhood days when you came to know that you have a special needs brother?
So The earliest memories. I don't think my very earliest memories in life are memories with Vishal. So I have two brothers, both of them are older to me, and my middle brother Vishal has intellectual disability. So technically I have known no other life. Um, I don't think you asked the question, children are cocooned or siblings are cocooned. I don't think we grew up in an environment where we were cocooned in any way. I don't think anyone in our household actually talked about it very much as a thing, but we just went about our days. And in going about our days as we did, I think I slowly started learning that things were different for me and my older brother than they were for my middle brother. So we all used to share a room, and all three of us used to share a room. And every night I would see my mother would do speech therapy with Vishal. And that's when I realized that maybe there is some help that is needed over there. Or when we used to sit for meals, he used to sit right next to me. And because there were some challenges in the younger days with motor abilities, she used to stand behind him and help him eat. And that is the sort of like regular therapeutic support that was provided that made me sort of start realizing that things were somewhat different. And that realization just grew. So I don't think there was never any demand on us to show up or be protective or support in any way, but there was this like growing realization that things were different. And I remember this one time I'd gone to visit my mother. I think I'd finished my exams in my school, and my mother was a teacher. So I went from my school to her school, and she was having a full day, and our exams had finished. So it was a shorter day for us. And when I was walking to her class, my brother, who used to go to her school, was in his class, and he stood up to speak, and I could see that he was so much taller because he was in grade 3 and it was not an age appropriate class. He was so much taller than the rest of his peers, and for the first time I felt, is this right? How does he feel? Because the tables and the furniture was smaller, and when he was sitting back down, he didn't quite easily fit in. And I think if you ask me what is the earliest memory that things were different, that really stands out because I must have been in grade 1 or 2, and I remember that. I remember thinking, oh, the furniture is not right sized for him, and everybody looks smaller. But everything else just felt normal. Like, they were chasing my elder brother to study a bit more and finish his homework. They were helping my younger brother with speech therapy, and I was being told not to read like this, and that was just normal.
The reason for going through your earliest memory is because I'm sure there will be very young parents as well when they are going through right now. If they see it, I would like them to know that that we know what is going on, and that you are not alone in that, because in the initial stages you feel that you're the only person in the world who's going through this. And the isolation actually starts from that point onwards within the family. So now, from moving from self to the families, I'll go to Raman. They are seldom the fathers who are in the forefront of activism, because in our normal society, the men are going around, they have to earn the money, especially if they have a special need child, and the mothers normally take the primary caregiver role. But I think in your case, you have been, managing both the front, being now a single parent for quite some time, and also managing your work. How has that been, your journey? And did you face any discrimination within the family, to begin with? And also, I'll come to all of you. If you have any anecdote, a good or a bad one, or even something which left a bad taste in your mouth, about the whole thing about acceptance.
Right, right. So let me just break it into two parts. So as I was saying, initial part of Manya's years, I was actually working. So she was almost till 14 and 15 when I got separated. So till then, my wife was sort of, was a primary caregiver, and I was focusing on my career. And I think one of the learnings that we got through the process was uh, that we have to figure out a way to balance the, what's the right word, pressure or or the effort that you need to put in for the child development, and leaving it to one parent uh, is too much to ask, at that point in time. And if I look back, at least in my personal life, that's one of the driving force, and some of the challenges that I faced in my personal life, where if I look back and if I have to redo my life, it would be that I wish I could be more participative in the first 15 years of my daughter's upbringing. Um, for some reason, I thought my primary job was to provide financial security, both current and future, get the best possible, um, facilities and interventions that are required, because that's what I will do. Uh, and that's good in a way, and that's important as well. But I think it is still not the same as the 24/7 effort that is required by a parent, on an ongoing basis. And 10, 15 years, if you don't get that participation, that's a little tough. Second, we were a nuclear family when we were in Bangalore. So just as a sort of background, I lived in Bangalore for 10 years, and last 12 years I've been in Gurgaon. So we were pretty much a nuclear family, and we didn't have enough support structure, which was which was accepting, to the point that you were making, for my daughter to accept the way she is, right? Um, so we were a nuclear family. That means even more pressure on one parent. So I think one learning that I would always sort of share is, um, besides the critical responsibility of providing the best facilities and securing financial future, figure out a way to balance the effort which is required in the child development and raising the child itself. So that was one. Now coming back to where today, so when I got separated, I had to take a decision between a choice, whereas I was a full-time partner in one of the big four firms at that point in time, and my work required a lot of traveling, almost 3 to 4 days a week. I was out of town, and which basically means that I had to sort of give up that, which is okay. I mean, I don't have any regrets as such. I had my space in the sun, so no regrets on that. But from a from a career point of view, I mean, I had to put that in the background, and now I'm an independent consultant, which I take only one or two clients at a time, so that I can balance it out with other personal needs. So that there has been a change, but it's not something that I feel negative about it. I feel it's all right. It's fine.
So, Raman, two things comes out from this is that it's a very good takeaway that as a spouse, it's very important to have an equal role besides, going around your career and, that, okay, we are earning. So we are, we have just one specific role, because as a primary caregiver takes a lot of toll when you are raising a child with special need compared to that of a neurotypical child. Secondly, you had the option of working from home because of your
Yeah.
nature of your work. But otherwise, I just wonder, as if you did not have that kind of a choice
Yeah.
of career, how you would have managed that. And would you like to reflect briefly as to what kind of accommodations for such single parents would you recommend in the workplaces? Because that is a very important aspect where we feel the strain on the families.
Uh, yeah. No, I think maybe I was lucky. From a professional environment point of view, I got as much support as I wanted in terms of. So I tried continue my professional career for almost a year, even when I was a primary caregiver, because my mother was here with me at that point in time. And there was a good acceptance within the office colleagues. But the challenge, what happens, Nina, is, and to be fair to the professional setup, is they are set up with certain KPIs. They also need to progress, right? So there are people with similar capabilities, similar performance, and they're doing much more, and then so on and so forth. And it's not fair that my personal I could get a special consideration beyond a certain point just because I have a special child, because they are also putting in that much effort. So I guess my sense is that we need to figure out what careers are the are available, which are which give you the option to balance between your personal requirement as well as your professional needs as well. My biggest challenge, if you really ask me, has been the the um, the change of intellectual stimulation. Let me put it that way. So when you're working in a high pace. At least when I in the industry that I was working in, it was a high paced, intellectually challenging environment. You're working in a different clients, different situations, a different scale. So the biggest challenge that I faced when I sort of went offline was basically how do you keep yourself intellectually growing. And I think that's the biggest challenge in my view. Once you shift from a full-time career to a part-time or a small-time career.
So listening to you, I think that one thing comes out clear is that you are still thinking from the organization's point of view, that they have their work, and you have to sort of compensate for for them to have you in the whole thing. But like we are talking about the family strain and vis-a-vis what we want or expect from the society at large. So will it be a very unreasonable ask from the corporate sector, let's say, so to
Oh,
speak?
no, not at all. So,
No.
sorry,
Just
go
1
on.
minute. Let me
Go on,
complete.
go on.
That, if let's say one organization has around 500 employees in, let's say, 10 different cities, out of those 500 employees, how many would have special need families?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. And how much will it really take for them to make a policy under the CSR to extend special services of support for such families, in the need of, so that the person like Raman Krishan can give undivided attention and in turn become more productive to the organization. I think it makes
Yeah, no, absolutely. So,
yeah.
absolutely, Nina. So maybe I didn't articulate it right. So what I meant was not that the corporates don't appreciate or understand or have policies on this thing. That's not what I meant. They do, but I think the point that I was making is, and maybe I think I'm just too influenced by my industry, is that you cannot expect the same level of growth
Obviously.
if you are personal growth, right? So you can't suddenly become manager to senior manager in 18 months if you also want to have some time balancing your personal requirements. Corporate is doing itself is doing enough, providing you a platform to manage your situation and so on and so forth. So you also, as an individual, you also need to be prepared that the growth that you thought when you were 20-year-old, that I'm going to grow every 2 years and go to a new designation and so on and so forth, that may not happen. So I was purely talking from that perspective. But having said that, the point that you're making is absolutely right. This is mandatory, that organization needs to have these policies. Some of them do. Most of them don't. And most of the Indian-owned mid-sized firm definitely don't. Most of the MNCs, in my knowledge, and even big Indian firms, if you look at the top 500 companies, they would have that policy. The challenge is not that, because they can only employ so many people. It's the big mid-size companies which probably employ 80% of the population, which may not have that policies. And that's where the discrimination happens even more. Yeah.
Thank you, Raman. Pooja, I'll come back to you, and then Mary, of course. I remember that you left your very, very lucrative job in UK. I mean, half of the Indians aspire to get into fancy jobs, go abroad and work, and you left your lucrative job as, I think, investment banker, and you came back to India, and your primary motive was also to give support to your brother. And so how has that been? I mean, and what was the driving force behind it, and how did you feel that the family, as a family member, you have come in support, stepped up, and whether you could have expected a little more from the larger extended families from your side in terms of support? Very quick, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, so that we move on. Thanks.
To be an investment banker in my first job. But when I was in the UK, I used to work for an education company.
Yeah, I think there is some
Can you hear me fine?
There was a communication, little glitch. Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me fine.
Yes, now
Okay.
it's fine.
So I was just saying that I want to clarify that I was a banker in my first job, but when I came back from the UK, I'd been working with the FTSE 100 company, and it was good. It was lucrative. It was good. I was very happy. But I came back because we were coming to a life stage where it felt like I wanted to be closer to my brothers, um, especially to my younger brother. And all along, I think growing up with this issue in the family and seeing a mother who was a special educator, I've always also had this seed of desire to work in this space and make a change. As we'd grown older, I'd also seen that, our life trajectory was very, very different from how it was panning out for my brother. Like, padhai hua, got a job, found a relationship, moved, and his access to those opportunities did not exist. So the unfairness of it kind of became a bigger realization for me, and I wanted to do something. So it was both a combination of wanting to be closer to him and to my brother as my dad was aging and ailing, and wanting to set up something in this space, which is a desire that had grown over the years. Your question about what sort of help could have been expected from the extended family, I don't think it was unhelpful in any way. I think the transition was difficult, moving from the first world to a developing country. Like, one of us was stuck in a traffic jam today. It's something that would probably not happen. If you knew it's going to take 35 minutes to get somewhere, you would get 35 minutes. And those sorts of things actually make life, the quality of life much better and much easier. And one should not underestimate what that means. So it was a difficult transition for me personally in that sense, but I think it has been a very, very fulfilling journey. The one thing that I did find difficult, and I wish it had been different, was that I got a lot of questions asked, and not just from family, but also from my friends and colleagues, like, "Kyo choda?" Like, you were in the UK, and why would you leave your job? Why would you leave a FTSE 100 job? Do you have a plan? And honestly, I did not have a plan. I just knew I wanted to be here and I wanted to do something in this space. And the only way to start was to relocate and be here and immerse myself in this environment. So the fact that every conversation made me realize that I did not have a plan and that was an expectation, sort of made me a little nervous and made me feel like I could not have a conversation, or I did not have a tribe that would support me in what was going to be like a professional adventure. Which could have gone right or gone wrong. Thankfully, it's gone right, but it could have also gone totally wrong. And I wish that was easier. So when some family member actually makes a switch to take on care responsibilities and do something in the space, one shouldn't have to explain so much. One shouldn't have to explain one's motivations so much. And that's why, even the work that we do, saying that these stories are a very important part of our life stories and they genuinely influence, they're formative to our identity and our sense of self, is important to build awareness and advocacy around.
Thank you. Mary, before I ask this question, I want to know, were there any anecdotes, anything which, left a mark in your mind as to, this is not correct. And, in terms of discrimination or lack of inclusion, something which you can remember, which you still, feel unpleasant about. And second thing is, at what point did you think that, what you're doing as a mother to your son is not enough, and that you need to step up and reach out to seek support for yourself, and also to, giving and reaching out to others to give them support? Because I'm sure was there any one triggering point which made you start, AFA, or was it a gradual, organic kind of a growth movement towards that addiction?
Well, okay, to start with, I think when I got the diagnosis, see, my son was like a charged particle. He was constantly on the move, and half my household belongings and everything used to go out of the window. So people would often say that, this is the only thing I really faced. They thought I was a really bad mom. I didn't manage my son well, because, people would do, if they came to visit me, their stuff would be outside the window. They'd disappear somewhere, right? And I didn't know what to do because I didn't have the diagnosis, remember? Then once I got the diagnosis, I realized that I couldn't go back to my job anymore. I'd taken a 5-year break to bring up my son, thinking that I'll, restart my career. So that I put on hold. And then I didn't really think I'm going to start an organization, to be very honest. I wanted people to know what autism was. I wanted, because, and disability, the whole concept of disability, I was beginning to truly understand. So I started writing articles in newspapers and magazines and stuff like that. When I moved to Delhi, putting up posters at Sri Ram Center and all that kind of stuff, because I wanted to create that awareness. And everything that happened after that has been completely organic. When I started AFA, I didn't even know what a not-for-profit was. I just did what a friend told me to do. She said, you have to register yourself. So I said, how do I do it? And she gave me a memorandum of another organization. I looked at it and I created something. And I sat in the registrar's office and got it, registered. Everything that has happened at AFA in the early, I would say, 8 or 9 years has been completely organic. There was no thought that I'm going to start an organization and do anything. I just had to act, which is why it's Action for Autism. I had to do something, right? Because I am. And I never felt that, why me? That is something that I've never felt. I just feel that, if life gives you lemon, make lemonade, right? Instead of, sitting around, why me and all that kind of stuff, do what you can. And so yeah, I don't think there was, it was purely organic. There was no planning that I'm going to do this. I mean, I hear of young people starting organizations now. They've got a lawyer, they've got a CA. I had me, period. So I went and sat in the office, in Lok Nayak Bhavan, getting FCRA, sat at the registrar's office, sat everywhere, as many days as required. 1 month at one place, by the way, before I got that paper. So it was just, I had to do it, so I went and did it. But that was a different age, when I did all this. This is a different age. This is 40 years back. So this is a very different time, a different way of doing things. Right. And
Right.
and honestly, for my family, I've got to say this, apart from some people saying that, I've spoiled my child and stuff like that, I family on both sides have been very supportive. I've been very, very fortunate because I work with families all the time and I know what families put up with, and I know the kind of judgments that mothers particularly face every day. And I know I've been very lucky in that sense. And which is why, when you've been lucky, you want to make sure that others don't go through the kind of hell that many of them go through. And that's really, really hell that they go through. And when families go through hell, it's a kid who gets affected. There is always an impact on the individual, whatever the condition is. And that is why it is so important to help families so that our children have a positive life experience.
I'm listening to all of you. One thing which is really, as a collective, we will have to really think that the kind of, when it comes to, because we are talking, journey on inclusion through the prism of families. And the earlier we all had this joint family system, which has now come down to nuclear families. I think in 80s and 90s there were like at least 3 kids in a nuclear family, or even the nuclear families had just the in-laws. Now that has shifted in the 2000 with no in-laws and just single child. So we are just, and then we have these growing rate of divorces. I personally know at least 10 families having children with special need, and the special need part has impacted their marriage, and they have, which has caused the break in even in that shrinking unit, and we have come down to single parents and all that. So we really need to think of all those kind of, marriage as an institution is also somehow bearing the brunt. So I do not know at what point do we stop the depleting support or the strength or the of this family as a unit, because that's why I actually went towards assisted living or supported living, that we need to create or redefine what family means or what community means. And I think there's a lot needs to be done on that. And I hope that these kind of conversations will lead, but before doing that, we need to reflect as to how and where we are going and how much more we can do in terms of reaching out to each other, and becoming each other's support system. But before moving towards that and reflecting more, Pooja, I would like to know that you have been now specifically through your own vertical working with schools to equip them with knowledge and tools to make the classroom inclusive. How has that journey been so far? What are the lacks right now which needs to be immediately addressed? And of course, there is always a lot of scope for improvement, which is an ongoing journey. But what has been so far when you started and where we are right now? And I give you 3 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. There's a world of things to talk about.
I know it's
there.
absolutely unfair, Pooja. You can,
No, that's
later.
totally cool. But like you said at the start of this conversation, family is foundational to society. I also believe schools are foundational to society. And fortunately, we live in a country where between the RPWD Act and the education policies, schools ought to be inclusive. So if you ask me what is it that needs to change, I mean, irrespective of what kind of school it is, schools need to be inclusive. And I would say the first thing really ought to be not to refuse a child admission. That children with disabilities remain outside of school, to me, is the biggest problem that needs to be addressed. One needs to find an educational institution that is suitable for their needs. But so often children are turned away and there aren't enough special schools. Not everyone belongs in a special school. There's a lot that can be done within schools. But the first thing is to say, bacche ko admission mana nahi karna hai. Because the moment you don't have a child going to school, you're also kind of cutting off the socialization opportunities and a lot of the growth that comes from just organic engagement with the world. And what you're also denying the world, the rest of the world, is an opportunity to learn about diversity. Because if you don't learn about diversity when you're young, you're never really going to be able to understand it. So a lot of the questions that you've been asking, what was the pushback from the family? Should, policies at the workplace be different? Like, how are you going to imagine all of that if you've not experienced diversity? Then it's a theoretical thing. It's not a practical lived experience that you're bringing to bear at work. So I think getting schools to be more inclusive is very important. So letting children walk through a school gate and then figuring out how they need to be supported. So the second thing I would say is teacher capacity needs to be built. For like a variety of reasons, we don't have enough special educators in the system. And the way we think about education in the Indian education system, it's so curriculum heavy that, there's so much focus on academic achievement and finishing the syllabus. Then there isn't enough attention on, and large classroom sizes. So there isn't enough attention on what a particular learner needs. So thinking about a child, and not just a child who may have a diagnosed disability, but every child learns differently. So could we actually try and make more room in the day as well as in the classroom for a teacher to provide more sort of personalized attention to all learners and be able to support their needs and build their capacity along the way. And this is also something that doesn't get fixed in a day. So your question about what has changed between when I started 5-6 years ago and now, I think what has changed is that at least the conversation is happening. Thanks to NEP, thanks to the push on, making inclusion possible. Has it all happened? It hasn't. But just as an example, between July and August, there have been 2 large-scale conferences on inclusive education in Delhi and Jaipur. And those have brought together school leaders, they've brought together experts from around the world sharing their experience. And just the fact that this conversation is happening more is a very, very positive sign. There is a long way to go, but it is definitely a move in the positive direction. And when we have these conversations, it's also an honest conversation about what a school finds challenging. And unless we have that honest conversation to say, hum nahi accommodate kar pate, it is a financial drain. How do you make it work? You can't address a problem if you don't name it. And what I really liked about one of the conferences was that there was room for that. There was a safe space for that conversation from the school's point of view as well. So
but when you go to
optimistic.
these schools and you interact with the students as well, and
yes,
I really want to know, how are their minds working? Are they naturally, I mean, if they are unclouded by, the biases which are already there, which is naturally transferred from, the previous generation to them, do you think they're thinking on their own and they are non-divisive on their own if they're left on their own? And
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that because, I mean, just for context for everyone, we start working with children at age 8. So we, 7 we feel is too young. But if you see and if you think about children in your own vicinity, you'll see all children will play with the, cleaner lady. They will all play with the drivers. They're inherently inclusive. And there are so many of these reels that you'll see going around where if you ask two, children from two different races to say
I just saw that yesterday.
you saw that yesterday.
That
It
is
was
so
going around
impactful.
yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes,
Maybe for the
but
context, they showed like 4 sets of children. Like one was, darker skin, one lighter skin, then one on a wheelchair, and another one the Down syndrome. And they asked each set of these pairs, so what difference do you see? After thinking a lot, they said, I don't like cabbage, and I think she likes cabbage, and I live up the hill, and I mean, it was I'm getting
yeah,
bumps, that how much
but that
corruption we transfer into their, how much biases we transfer in them. I mean, if they're left on their own, to learn, self-learn, I think we need to overhaul the education system. Like, we have
we
to
need to
find out
overhaul
the
the
purpose
homes,
as to
Nina.
what is the purpose of education.
I do want to step in here, Nina. I think we
Yeah.
need to change the way we think because, I mean, one is understanding what a child goes through. So
Yeah.
at that age, they're inherently inclusive. And the work that we do is go and have conversations so that that abstract feeling that, inclusive hona hai actually translates to some concrete action. At that age, if you say, oh, so, this friend of yours who has Down syndrome may also have like this difference, children know what to do. And they grow up with that awareness as well as acceptance of what their contribution is. The other thing that actually happens with every child, and this is the life, this is the life journey, that when they hit adolescence, like all children are looking, they form their cliques, they form their groups, and they hang out with people who are like them. So going before they hit that life stage and getting them to be, more friendly with the idea of diversity is important. And I think schools do make some room for this. What happens is when they go back home, is from home that they get the message, you are not going to hang out with so and so. And it's not just about disability. We also hear children say, Mummy ne bola, she's too short. Too short. You're not going to hang out with so and so. Or, because EWS inclusion also happens in our schools, they're not going to come to your birthday party. So, this lack of inclusion or the instruction to keep distance comes from homes more than with schools.
Absolutely.
So
I agree with you. Thank you, Pooja. Mary, your organization has been working some fantastic work in skilling people on the autism spectrum, preparing them for workplaces. What has been your observation? What has been the success rate? And how long were they, or how many were they in terms of percentage, or let's say on the scale of 1 to 10? Were they able to, A, get the job, and B, able to retain the job in the main workforce? And what can be done more in 3 minutes?
Okay. So, like you said, we've been working in employment.
Yeah.
And there is a certain segment of our kids who we can place in employment. And one of them being they have to be speaking children. Otherwise, speaking adults. We work mostly with corporates. And it's not been very encouraging, to be honest. In all these years, I think we've placed maybe 20 people who are in employment. And there are many, many more who do internships. So don't let yourself get fooled when you read in big, news articles where so many people, autistic people have been placed. They're just interns. They've done internships for short periods. And we've been placing lots of people in internships, but that doesn't really count. It's great as experience, right? But that's not really employment. So the employment scene is very challenging. And another difficulty that arises is, this whole thing that Pooja was talking about. It's, till we cannot really have true inclusion till we create awareness about diversity. And by diversity, I don't just mean disability. I mean any kind of diversity. You see, people will, because there is not an awareness of diversity, if I come back to disability, a lot of families with children with disabilities don't feel comfortable coming out with them in public because of the way public would look at them. And what I keep telling families is, that space belongs to you and your child as much as everyone else. Go out, because if people do not see enough citizens on wheelchairs, enough citizens with cerebral palsy, enough citizens with autism, they will never know that they are as much a part of our society as anybody else. Right now, in their mind, this is just a little, we don't, they're not really a part. They come in once in a while. I see one person in school. We have to make them a part of our society, and that can only happen if there is true awareness, right? One of the things we don't have is awareness. And as an organization that works with, say, government departments, with schools across the country, what we find is that people have no idea truly what disability is. They may know what is blind, what is deaf, they may have heard of autism, but that's it. They don't know what disability is. And in our country, we have not that 2% disability that the government talks about. There is at least a 15% population to 20% with disability in our 1.2 billion or 3 billion that we are now as a population. But we don't see them. People don't know what disability is. And if we have to change this, we have to, and see, very often when we have our events, disability events, we are preaching to the converted. There are other people with disabilities, other, professionals. Where is the common everyday person seeing our population, right? So I feel that if you have to make a change, whether it is an employment, and employment is tough. Like earlier, Raman was talking about, are there any arrangements in companies for families who have a child with disability? There is a rule, by the way. There is a government rule that you cannot transfer as you want in government jobs, at least, right? There are certain provisions you have to provide. It does not happen. They are constantly fighting. They're going to the chief commissioner disabilities to not be transferred to a place where there are not services, or to be transferred to a place where there are services, right? But these are their rights. And why don't they happen? Because most of the people in those companies just have this circular. They don't really know what disability is. They don't understand what their needs are. So why should I bother? So until and unless we can really create, and this is something we keep telling the government, spend on awareness campaigns, create awareness. Because if there is, go to a government school, right? We are talking about private schools. Go to a government school. They have the kids with disabilities put in there. But most of them don't know what to do. And of course, I mean, we are working with those schools also, trying to train the teachers. But most of them have no idea about disability.
Thank you very. I will start taking some questions here. The audience have been asking very good question. I can see Pooja is also addressing a few of them. Pooja, that's very nice. But I would like to address one question which, Mr. Wangchuk has asked. Can you share a moment when you felt my child truly belongs here? And because I'm also a mother of a special need child, the day I decided that I don't have to explain or give any reason for my child's existence in this world, that he has equal right, just like you and me, that he is not a sum total of his own label, that he has his own agency. I think that was the true moment when I think that my child truly belonged. And my journey in the inclusion, started from that point onwards. And because, like we're talking about, when we expect the inclusion from the world, it has to start from us. So I hope that answers this question. One question, I think maybe if you could quickly answer that somebody's asked, I think Radha asked, how has been the journey of advocacy and inclusion from 90s to now?
Well, I won't say that nothing has happened.
Yeah.
Change has taken place. But I think given that 90s to now is, 30 odd years, 30 plus years, it has been very slow, right? There has been change, but there should have been a lot more change. What has happened is not enough. And we were talking about school education. Schools now have to take in children because of the Right to Education Act amendment that happened in 2012. But having the kid in your classroom is not enough. Are they getting an education? Are they being prepared for life? That does not happen very often. And the schools are not doing a favor to the kids by taking them in. Right? They're not doing a favor. It's their right, like you said, Nina. It's their right. And we have to start looking at it as a right. Very often, as parents, we go there as supplicants, please, lay low. No, parents have to stand up and fight. This is my right. And you have to provide the kind of education that my child needs. Only when you do that will schools make the effort. It's like, in the beginning, they used to keep saying, oh, you started a special school, you're training other people. Where are the autistic people? So it was a vicious cycle. So we did this project with doctors, with pediatricians, so that diagnosis went up. So we said, here are your people. Now, where are the schools? So it's, it's a vicious
starts with the
cycle.
demand. I mean, we don't accept the
Absolutely.
status quo.
We should not
And
accept status quo.
and somebody is asking, what is one message you would like to give everyone attending this webinar as a takeaway? I would like to say that and it's a reflection. Somebody asked Ramana Maharshi at one time, how do we treat others? And he said there are no others. I think we have grown on such Vedantic traditional knowledges, and yet, we are not actually learning from that. And today we live in a very, very, I think we have been always living in a transactional world where everything is based on exchange, So now the people who are on the absolute margin, because of this transactional framework in which we operate in these small boxes, we are not able to fathom as to what is it that they can give us in exchange. And that's why probably we have to take into account the non-tangible things as well, apart from the materialistic give and take. I mean, if and I take it, on behalf of, I'm taking the liberty to say on behalf of all of us here, that our children, our brothers, our siblings, our children, our, fellow advocacy people have taught us that, empathy and never giving up. And, these are also very, very important, even if it's non-tangible transactional currencies. And if they are teaching us to become sensitive and reaching out to so many others and creating so many umbrellas like Inclusive Dunya, Action for Autism and whatnot, I think that, we won't lag behind. Yes, like Mary said, we need to step up, we need to speed up, and we should never give up. I think with that, I would hand over to Sunaina. I know there are always more questions, but I think that there has been a lack of time, and the chief whip told me to stay in time. Do we have more time to take questions, Sunaina?
I think we can take one more.
Okay. Yeah, let me just go back. What has been the biggest challenge your family has faced in creating inclusive opportunities for your child? Anybody? What has been the biggest challenge your family has faced in creating inclusive opportunities?
I can go.
Yeah, please, Pooja.
I'll make it quick so there's a chance for Mary to say this too. I think what I have seen as a younger sister is that, my brother's grown to be very, very capable, but it's kind of to no avail because, like all of us have graduated to employment and something that's a full day at work in the traditional sense. We have struggled to find a meaningful long-term opportunity for him. And where he has found, we found that it's not a very receptive environment that encourages belonging. Or sometimes also not very safe. I think that's been our biggest struggle because we've done all of this work and it's great, but for somebody who can go out and participate meaningfully in society and the workplace, he's not had that opportunity, and some of it comes from also expectations कि ये कर नहीं पाएगा. So
Mary?
that.
Mary, would you like to add one?
Okay, so I think I would say, see, whenever there was a challenge, I went and figured out a way to do something about it. Okay, but I say two of the challenges that were really challenges for me. One is, see, my son he's minimally speaking and he's high support needs. And I had worked with him on a home program for a year and a half. And I figured out he's really smart and he can go to a regular school. So I found a little school for him. And after a week, I was told to take him out because he flaps in class. He's very violent. And that I really found challenging. I said, he's somebody who's ready to learn. But if a school is not willing to take him because he's flapping and they consider that as violence, I mean, what am I going to do? So that of course drove me to do something. The other thing that I think a lot of families also find challenging right now was when he was young and I had to take him for medical procedures. So I remember when he had to stand to take an X-ray of his chest. And he couldn't, he couldn't put his chin and he kept moving around. And this was Mahajan, a place that I love going to. Mahajan, and I'm naming it. They've changed now. In Kasturba, Gandhi Marg, I think they had a place. And I was asked to take him out. I said, isko yahan se le jao. And I remember I went to this very fancy dentist when he had tooth problems. And he said, take this boy out of here. I can't deal with him. Right? These were the challenges that families face. But and not everybody can say, okay, I'm going to figure out a place. I don't care whether you do it or not. Most families get shattered.
Absolutely.
Experiences, right? And so these are two that just came to mind. Everything is so old now, I can't remember too much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think we have pushed beyond the time frame. Over to you, Surena, sorry.
Thank you very much, Neena Wagh and our panelists, Pooja Sharma, Mary Barua, and Raman Bhushan, for such a thoughtful and engaging discussion. So inclusion is not the responsibility of families alone, as we've seen. It is a shared commitment. And today's conversation has really helped us reflect on how stronger partnerships and responsive support systems and collective action can enable persons with special needs to experience dignity, belonging, opportunity, and meaningful participation throughout life. My sincere thanks to the teams at PLS, CEP, Ritinjali, and Pallavanjali for working behind the scenes to make this session possible. Please do explore the links shared in the chat if you would like to stay connected or learn more about our work. And finally, thank you to all who have joined for your questions and for your reflections. Your participation truly brings these conversations to life. We'll be sharing the detailed report and the recorded session via email shortly. And we look forward to welcoming you again at our next webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.